Welcome to Assembly Update. I'm Ted Flint. With us today, Assemblyman Michael Norris, who serves the 144th Assembly District, which includes the counties of Erie and Niagara. Assemblyman Norris, good to see you.
Ted, always great to see you. Thanks for having me on the program today.
You betcha. Let's go over the 2023 legislative session. Let's talk about the issues that you think are important to your constituents and to all New Yorkers, and the issues that your colleagues across the aisle think are important.
Well, I tell you what is most important to me right now is continue to make sure we protect our infrastructure in the city of New York. I talk about my back to basics plan all the time. There are key investments that we have to make. And as a ranking member of the Transportation Committee, that is paramount in my thinking, make sure that we tackle the rehabilitation of our roads and our bridges and our culverts. And in this year's budget, which I highly critical of because it was to the tune of $229 billion. There was a glimmer of hope in there where we were able to get $60 million more in CHIPS funding annually. That's part of the transportation upstate budget. So that was important to me. But when you look at the rest of the legislative session, driven by the progressives out of New York City, many things that I just completely disagree with. There was a proposal to ban all natural gas in the city of New York. Absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. We went through the blizzard of 2022 here. People relied on natural gas. By the way, it's a clean energy. And we used it here when the electricity went out up here in Western New York. And they proposed it. We fought back very, very hard. We let the people in our districts know what was being proposed. And though I'm not completely happy with the end result, which will require now bans on natural gas for new builds, at least existing homeowners with natural gas will be able to keep their natural gas appliances going forward. And I opposed even the partial ban on new builds because I think it's ridiculous. But to point out, because of the constituents who let their voices be heard, they joined with me. We had a couple of thousand people reach out to my office by petitions and everything else. And that was, we put great pressure on the governor and on the upstate members of the majority caucus. And we certainly were able to make some tiny progress on that, at least making sure there wasn't a complete ban on existing homes. And I also want to talk about criminal justice. Because we continue to see in the city of New York that crime is up. We are seeing thefts on a regular basis of vehicles. You can turn on the news every single day. And that's because these kids who are, for example, stealing these cars realize there are no consequences for their actions. Mm-hmm. And I've opposed bail reform, and we see the destructive parts of that now, what's occurring in our upstate communities. I oppose raise the age. You can see this, that individuals under the age of 18 know that there's no accountability. They can just go out and do this. And then on top of that, at the end of session, Ted, what happened was the downstate majority or led majority, the progressives, pushed through the clean slate bill. Now, what is clean slate? It sounds really nice, doesn't it? Clean slate.
Sure. Oh, sure. Sure.
Right. But you know what it is? It is going to now automatically seal the records of convictions for felonies 8 years after they get out and 3 years for misdemeanors. And only the very highest A-level felonies are going to be exempt from that. But listen to some of the ones that will be sealed. So manslaughter. If someone's convicted of manslaughter, that will be automatically sealed. If you look at endangering the welfare of a child, that will now automatically be sealed. If you're a major drug trafficker, we're going to talk about that and the fentanyl crisis that's occurring in the city of New York, hopefully in this program, because it's very important, that will be sealed. And you know what? There's already a process in place in the city of New York that someone can make application to the court and they can ask whether or not their record should be sealed. It already exists. And all you have to do is make the application, and then a judge will weigh the circumstances and determine whether or not it's in the best interest of the defendant and the best interest of the public that their record be sealed. You know, people have a right to know. If you're convicted of manslaughter, endangering the welfare of a child, major drug trafficking, employers have a right to know, and so do neighbors. So you can look it up and you can see whether your neighbor has been convicted of these crimes. And I can tell you now with this legislation that has been passed, that will not, these convictions will be automatically sealed without even a hearing in front of a judge. So I adamantly oppose that. And you know what else? I don't hear anything about the victims and what these victims of these crimes have gone through. And that is what bothers me the most. You know, you can't wipe away. You can't just wipe this crime away from the victims. These victims for their entire life are going to have this burden on them. And now we, the progressive, not we, I mean, the progressives in Albany, I oppose this. I want to be very clear about this. The progressives in Albany, they just want to automatically wipe these crimes away, seal them. And you know what? It does no justice for the victims in the city of New York. None.
For 8 years, and these are serious crimes in many cases. You mentioned some of the examples. I mean, these are felony crimes, sealed for 8 years.
Yeah. After 8 years, after their conviction, they will be automatically sealed. So, you know, they get out of jail, let's say even as early as 21 now, under some of these other progressive reforms that took place, which I oppose. 8 years goes by, it will automatically be sealed for the rest of their lifetime, which means businesses won't be able to look it up, neighbors won't be able to look it up, and you know what? People need to be held accountable for the actions of their actions. You know, and that's what I'm very fearful about. You see this in the city of New York, and I'm very concerned about the victims. You know, I speak to many law enforcement officers on a regular basis, and what has happened to New York with the rise in crime is directly a result of the progressive policies out of New York City that are being adopted. And it's scary to me, and it should be scary to you. And I will continue to fight for changes to this, to go to back how it used to be, so criminals are held accountable for their actions.
You know, you mentioned the fentanyl crisis at the top of the program, and just how serious is this statewide? I know it's an issue in certain parts of the state, but is it an issue in your district?
Ted, yes, it is a serious, very serious issue. And let me just explain a couple points. Last week, I was able to go to a roundtable held by Congressman Nick Langworthy, and we were joined by members of law enforcement, including Sheriff John Garcia from Erie County and the undersheriff. We had representatives from the Lancaster Police Department there as well, and also providers of what is actually occurring now with their clientele and the impact. And we heard what is taking place. Do you know that 90% of the fentanyl comes from China? And it's primarily being sent to Mexico, and then is being put through the drug cartels into the United States through the southern border. And also, I believe, from what I understand, some from the northern border as well, but it's coming in. And there are multiple overdoses a week in my district because of the use of the fentanyl that is now being laced in other drugs, including marijuana. And I have to tell you, from the discussion that we had at this roundtable, that was most alarming to me. You know, I oppose legalizing marijuana in the state of New York. I've got concerns about that, primarily because of brain development and driving while under the intoxication or the use of marijuana. But then to hear that on the black market, marijuana is also being laced with fentanyl, and it only takes one little speck of fentanyl to kill you.
Could be fatal.
And so, yes, so this is very serious. And we talked at the roundtable about how bail reform is actually also having an impact on this. Now, if individuals are charged under the laws for this, they are getting for the use of it, they're getting for drugs, they're getting a parent's ticket. Before, under the old bail reform, on the bail laws, they could be held in custody, and then they could actually get the proper treatment within the jail and within the facility to help them. But right now, they're getting an appearance ticket, they're going back out on the street, and the cycle continues and continues. And an also thing I want to tell you, just from what we can do in the city of New York, not just repeal bail reform, repeal raise the age, repeal clean slate.
Sure.
Well, all those things should be repealed because it's impacting us. But what we also can do are a couple of things. We can actually list under the state crimes the possession and the distribution of fentanyl and make that a class a felony under the Class E. There's a bill, for example, by Assemblymember Carl Brabenak, a member of our conference who does a tremendous job. He sponsors that bill, and I hope to become a co-sponsor in that bill, because right now, under our penal law, there's no term of fentanyl in there, and the law enforcement officers actually need that to be embedded in the statute. So not only could they maybe be charged, particularly the drug traffickers and the drug distributors under federal law, but also under state law. So that's something that I'm working on. Also, another bill from Assemblymember Mike Durso, also a member of our conference. You know, fentanyl is so lethal, like I explained before, one little speck can kill you. But what's also occurring is when our law enforcement officers and our first responders, including our volunteer firefighters, our paid firefighters, our EMS workers, when they are showing up on the scenes, believe it or not, they are now being overcome by fentanyl, and another officer or a first responder has to administer Narcan to them, so bring them back. Our first responders, Ted.
That's
and there's
unbelievable.
In the city of New York right now, Mike Durso has this proposed bill to make it a crime if you use a drug with fentanyl and it causes a first responder to be overcome and have to be using Narcan, that would also be a crime. That's something we have to do. And there is also another bill by actually a bipartisan bill by Assemblymember Steve Stern, which would make it a Class A1 felony if someone is distributing the fentanyl, drugs laced with fentanyl, and they're killing people, and that would also be considered a top-level homicide. So these are things that we can do at the state level. Of course, there's many things that President Biden can do, and his failed policies on the southern border and everything else. But I want to just focus on what the state can do in this crisis. And that is some of the areas that I'm working on right now. It was a great roundtable with the congressman. So grateful to be a part of that. And I learned a lot as well, being with Sheriff Garcia and the impact of the fentanyl on our community. And listen, Ted, it is happening not just to our children, but the highest rate of deaths between 30 and 39 years old is because of fentanyl.
It's a quality of life issue, obviously.
Yes, and it transcends. It transcends social economics. It could happen in rural areas, it could happen in suburban areas, and it can happen in our inner cities. But it transcends all social and economics. This is a crisis, and we have to address it. And those are some of the things we can do at the state level that I mentioned. And certainly President Biden should be paying a very close attention to this and reforming the federal policies.
That's right.
To hold these distributors, drug cartels who are sending fentanyl into our communities and killing not just children, but adults as well. We have to do something about it. And I'm committed to working in a bipartisan manner to get that done.
All right. We got a couple of minutes left with Assemblyman Michael Norris. Assemblyman Norris, tell us about a local election bill you've been working on.
Ted, as you know, I'm the ranking member of the Election Law Committee. I served as an elections commissioner in Niagara County for 4 years, almost 2 decades ago, believe it or not. But but I do have the understanding of elections, and that's why Leader Barkley has had me be the ranking member for the last 7 years in this area. But of most importance to individuals maybe listening at home or on Facebook is that under a bill that was proposed this year, there will now be a shift of the local elections from odd years to even years, with the exceptions of our city. So your town races, your town board races, your county legislative races will be now held in a local in an even year, whether it be in 2024 or 2026, always in an even year. And I'm going to tell you why this is bad. One, it is bad because when you have an opportunity to run for local board, which is, you can talk to your town supervisor, your town board members. That's the first line of defense in our county legislatures. It's important at local issues. And I can tell you just in my district alone, we've had many local issues regarding solar and wind projects, for example, and the siting of those projects. We've had taxation issues. We have issues about other types of zoning. And this gives the opportunity in an odd year to have them on the ballot on their own, so these issues can be addressed without the distraction of the presidential race, the gubernatorial race, the race for Congress, the race for the state legislature, and so many others. And that, to me, is the most important thing. And so I want everyone to know also, you talk about long lines when you vote in. I can tell you, in a presidential election year, even year, the lines are much longer than they are in a local year. Now, I think you should vote in every election. Actually, it's more important for you to vote in local elections than the presidential election when you take a look at it and where New York quickly goes. Every year is important to vote, but even when in comparison, local elections are so very important. It's where you live. It's where the issues are. And so the ballot, right now, the ballot in an even year pretty much takes up a whole page, right? Now it will be on the back. You'll add all the local races in for county legislator, town supervisor. You'll have the town board members, a highway superintendent, the town clerk, and all the other ones. Plus, local referendums will now be there. The ballot will be so long, and the lines will also be long. So for these reasons, this is just, quite frankly, again, another downstate-driven trick, because they believe it's important for them on Long Island and other places down there to have their elections in an even year, because it gives the other party an opportunity to have their races be more competitive. But I see it in the opposite way. I see this as a destruction to local control, to local voices, and also increasing the lines and actually thwarting people from actually exercising their right to vote.
All right, we got about a minute left. Mike, want to talk about this Christmas in July event you have, Toys for Tots?
It's a wonderful program. I was at Children's Hospital just a few weeks ago. We're in the middle of our Christmas in July toy drive, where we actually donate, constituents donate new unwrapped toys to be given to the children at John O'Shea Children's Hospital in Buffalo. I want to thank everyone in my district for their cooperation. Everyone has been fantastic. And a special note, between the ages of 9 and 15, those ages, and I saw this firsthand when I delivered the toys a couple of years ago before the pandemic, they need puzzles, they need board games, they need books, they need things that they can use. And particularly in that age group, it's just like a little void there. I mean, a lot of people will donate stuffed animals and everything is for our young infants and for our toddlers, but that's something I want to point out. And you can donate those gifts through July 20th at our local libraries, including in Clarence, Lockport, Newfane, and Wilson, and also at my district office at 8180 Main Street in Clarence, New York. And you can call my office at 716-839-4691 for more information. And again, thank you. We will be delivering hundreds of toys. It will bring joy to the children. Unfortunately, you are there during the summertime.
And that's a great way to end the program on a positive note. Assemblyman Michael Norris, thank you. You gave out the district office number, and folks can contact you by calling that number at your DO, and we appreciate you being with us. And
always a pleasure, Ted. Thank you very much.
We'll talk to you real soon. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Assembly Update, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us out there. I'm Ted Flynn.